Hello and welcome to the YouTube channel for mprugs.com. My name is Mike Potter. I'm the owner of the business and the moderator of the videos that you see in my YouTube channel. And in this video, I'm going to introduce you to a type of Persian rug that fortunately did not exist probably until about 10 years ago, and hopefully, in my opinion, will disappear before the end of, well, soon. This is all about the vintage Persian rugs, as you see right here, and I'm going to be showing you a whole lot of them. And in this video, I'm going to introduce you to what has got to be the least personal, likable rug. If there is one type of Persian rug that I will not feature in my website, that I have been asked by friends and family in the rug business, I've had a lot of people, and for a while there, for about, I think it was 1 or 2 days, I actually featured a few of them, and we got a whole stack of them. But I wanted to give you a little bit of background. Unlike a lot of online retailers, unlike a lot of the guys that, whether they have the rug stores and the websites, I grew up in the rug business, but seeing how the industry works, my father begged me not to get into the rug business. So went to college, got myself a job at a bank, and basically realized that, well, shoot, if you're going to be a banker, you're not going to be a whole lot more respectable than a rug dealer. So I kind of slowly moved myself back into the rugs. This is what I grew up in. I mean, I'm passionate about them. But as you can also see it in my other videos, as well as in my website, one of the things that I am unfortunately notorious for is the fact that, well, I was born and raised in Germany, and you will get that German in me. Even though I have been, I think, cleansed of most of my German accent by living in the States now for over 30 years, that German in me comes out. And in this video, it's really going to come out. Because if there is one type of Persian rug that I absolutely hate, that I do not recommend, it is right here, the vintage Persian rugs. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get behind the camera, as I've often done, and I'm going to show you examples, and I'm going to give you my opinion, not as to why you shouldn't buy it, because they're cheap. And they are very modern looking. These are very contemporary. But I'm going to tell to you from a retailer's point of view. I'm going to show you examples of what happens when you put furniture on these things and what basically what's left of them after a few years. And for me, what's always been of absolute importance is giving it to you as straightforward as I can. Whether you are a client of mine for years, whether this is the first time you're watching one of my videos, I sell Persian rugs. But what I try to avoid as much as I possibly can is to sell you the BS that is oftentimes associated with Persian rugs. And in the vintage rugs, there is a whole lot of it. So I'm going to get behind the camera, but I thought I'm going to give you, I normally start out the videos with a personal message, but these types of Persian rugs, known as the vintage rugs, really bring out the German in me. So I'm going to see you again behind the camera here in just a minute, and then show you different examples. I'm also going to show you how one could be made into a vintage rug. So I'm going to give you all that. I'm going to get behind the camera, so I'll see you again here in just a minute. So here I'm back again behind the camera as always. So to get you, give you a little bit of an explanation how the vintage actually came about. I just thought I'd just point out to you, we have, there are several types of vintage rugs. They are the Genuine Persian, and these are basically rugs that at one point or another, or as I like to say, in the previous life, these were really nice Persian rugs. And then you have, for example, what is known as patchwork. This is a different type of Persian rug. This is where basically they, when a rug was just about, let's say it was damaged, destroyed, half of it is gone, they would simply cut it into pieces and then sew them together. This fortunately was something that was really popular a few years ago and now has pretty much all, thankfully, gone away. So while there are a few pieces left, and this is just one example, but they are considered to be like the vintage rugs. Here's another piece, and then you go into what is known as the vintage rugs right here. And basically what vintage rugs are typically older Persian rugs that can date anywhere from 20 to 100 years. And most of them are Persian, but you will also find other types of vintage rugs made in Afghanistan, Pakistan. Now there are actually new ones being made, mass produced in India. And so, but generally speaking, when you look at vintage rugs, at least most of the online dealers that I've seen, they have enough honesty at least left where they at least tell you that it's Persian or Indian. They're pretty good about telling you the origin of them. But just to give you an idea, this right here is a perfect example of what a vintage rug could look like, or as I've shown you in the back there with the deep purple one. And basically, to give you an idea for what it is, I have one on the floor. This is actually a rug that we just recently purchased. And we bought it specifically because we wanted a cheap rug that we can just lay right here. We don't have to worry about it being destroyed because it's already pretty much worn out. We paid something like $100. This is something we just got like on, this would like eBay. We went out, we saw one. This is basically 3 meters by 4 meters. So this is a substantial rug. We got it for like $100. Now, in case you're wondering, and you can see it right here, this is all pretty much worn down. There's virtually nothing left of the pile. But this right here would be a perfect rug to be basically vintaged. This is an old rug. We're guesstimating that's at least 60 years old, if not older. So it is an old rug, but under normal circumstances, this is a rug that you would not be probably handing down to your children and grandchildren. This is something you would probably, well, basically you would throw it away. So you have a rug that is worn out, as you can see in this corner of it. The pile has pretty much been worn off. Like I said, I'm sure this was a really nice rug. The design, I mean, this could have been a nice cache-on, an Adebir. It's a really nice rug. Not much left of it. But this is perfect for turning into something like this. For example, we paid $100. We paid about $100, or about 85 euros. For this rug. We could take this and turn it into something that will sell for many times more And all we have to do is, for example, in Iran, being that the vintage industry has really taken off, they have machines where you can put through, think of lawnmowers. Imagine if I put on a lawnmower and there's like razors at the bottom. And I basically go through them and I shave off the wool. I get rid of the pile, whatever's left of it. But I don't do it everywhere. I do it in patches. Here's a perfect example. This is a rug. They took something like this and turned it into something like this. So you have a rug that is right here. You can see how they left small bits of it. There's still some wool right here. It's actually kind of like the hair on my head. There's still some reminder of how I used to have a full set of hair. But then, as you can see, the rest of it is pretty much all taken. Once that is done, they will typically take the rug and they sew off the fringes. They just cut them off. They just take some scissors. For example, they'll take the scissors, cut off whatever pieces they don't want. They just cut it off, and then they sew it together. So you end up with some stitching that looks like this, right here. They just cut them all right off. And then that is typically what they look like. Stitch it up. You don't have to worry about it. And if you make holes in them, if there's holes, if there's tears, well, that's even better. That's kind of like your favorite pair of Levi's that has all kinds of holes and tears, which may look great on a good, solid pair of jeans that you have worn for years. But when it comes to rugs, where there is a hole, you typically end up with something a lot bigger, especially when it's a rug that you're going to be vacuuming and using. So what started out here gets there by having it shaved and trimmed, and then they take it and they give it an acid bath. They literally put it in over-dyed water, depending on the color that they want. Here's, for example, a blue piece. And as you can see here, I'm just going to focus in on this one. Typical vintage. You can see all kinds of places where there were tears. So they just sewn them together. This is what you typically get in vintage rugs. Very popular, especially with the urban folks. What I call the city slickers, being that I'm from, well, in Colorado. We are pretty much the kind of people, we're the opposite of the New Yorkers. But in the big cities, young folks, they love these types of rugs. And just to show you another, like I said, I have an example right here. And we have a whole stack of them. Now, we go from this to those. Now comes the German in me. Why do I hate these rugs? They're very cheap, and they are, for what you are typically looking at spending, they're actually not bad. The problem is that these types of rugs, they, two problems. One, if you are like me and you like to walk around your home or your office and you happen to like to walk around bare feet, you are not going to like walking on these rugs without shoes. Because this is going to be like walking on sandpaper. So just want to let you guys know. They may look nice, but they are not exactly the most comfortable things to walk on. As you can see here, for example, we have a red dyed piece, but you can see the Persian rug design. I mean, it's really cool the way they do it, but for the love of God, try to walk on one of these bare feet and you'll know why. Like I said, it's like stepping on Legos. The other problem that you have is these are rugs that were meant to have a pile. And I'm just going to use an old, this is a very traditional piece right here. This is a typical Persian rug. This could be turned into something like this, and then it becomes this. But these types of rugs, they have piles, and they have them for a reason. The pile is like, think of a human being. You have bones and you have muscles, or in the case of some of us, we got a little bit of fat. But there is something that holds the bones, the structure together. The vintage rugs are basically nothing more than skeletons. They have taken the rug that is supposed to be, that is nice and thick and firm, has a soft pile that is supposed to have furniture on it, that is supposed to last for decades. You get rid of all the muscles, you get rid of all the tissue, which is basically the pile, it's the meat of the rug, and you're left with a skeleton where after a few years, you are going to have issues, especially if, and I'm just going to use this piece right here as an example. We had folks who brought us this vintage rug, ask us if we can repair it. This rug was purchased apparently about 4 years ago. And these are family friends, so we are like, yeah, sure, we'll take a look at it. But we took one look at it and we're like, okay, well, how the hell, what are we supposed to do here? And this was caused in a dining room. This rug right here was placed under a dining room table where it so happens that the legs had little wheels. And even on stationary chairs, if you're going to put a vintage rug in like a dining room or any place where there is movable furniture on it, we'll give it a lifespan of a few years. Which, if it's a couple of $100, if you're not spending a lot of money, not a big deal. But if you are going to be spending hundreds, and in the case of the larger ones, thousands of dollars, well, I'm sorry, I got a big problem here. We got a nice purple, beautiful piece. I will not put it on my website, but if you want it, you can have it for about $4,000 or $5,000. And guess what? I'll give it a few years before you're going to call me back and say, Mike, I sure wish I would have watched your video first. These will not last. That is not the purpose of the vintage rugs. And again, I'm just going to show you the examples here. This is a different type of vintage rug. This was now actually made for us in India. These are really popular. This is actually a new rug that is made to look as if it is vintage. They make a rug and shave off the pile. So you have little bits and pieces left. And it's great and everything, but like I said, I'm not expecting this rug to last for very long. But you are paying a lot of money for a rug that will probably, you know, like I said, I'll give them an average lifespan of about 5 or 6 years. And like I said, again, we have these, but you will not find them in my website. If you go to MP Rugs, I will not put them. What I do feature, for example, just to give you an idea, now this is going to be something that I'm going to be featuring in one of my other videos. For example, we have the Moroccan as well as the Afghan kilims. We have different types of rugs like the Berber that you see here. But these rugs were made specifically without a wool. And these rugs, the kilims, which from the thickness, The Kilims are very similar to the vintage rugs. In terms of thickness, similar, but there is a day and night difference. The same thing here. If you were to ask me, say, Mike, I want to get a nice Moroccan Kilim, would you recommend it under a dining room table? My answer is no, I do not. These are the types of rugs that a lot of my clients, they will hang them on walls and all that. And I will talk about it in one of my other videos. In this video, I just wanted to talk about the vintage. I wanted to give you my personal opinion of them. This is what I do with my videos. I am not trying to sell you something. I'm trying to show you, share with you thoughts about Persian rugs from a Persian rug, well, from my point of view. So while I'm sure there are plenty who would disagree with me, this is my opinion. Now, in some of the other videos, and I'm going to be following up this video, I'm going to be talking about the Afghan Kilims that, for example, you see right there that my finger's pointing at. And I'm also going to be talking about the Moroccan Kilims, similar thin-piled rugs to the vintage, but they are, in my opinion, finer pieces. But again, it's a different type of client. So if you are looking at buying a vintage rug, understand the fact that you are not buying a rug for life. This is not something that is going to be in your home for, I don't know, 5 or 10 years at the most. And because of the coloring, because of the designs, they go in and out of fashion real quick. So when you look at buying a vintage rug, do yourself a favor and pick something that is not too expensive. And knowing that if you get rid of it in a few years down the line, it's not a big deal. So there you have it. This is my basic 411 on vintage rugs. I hope you like it. Feel free to subscribe and check out our website at mprugs.com. Take care. Bye-bye.